Welcome. You must be tired. Come in. As we went to my in-laws for my daughter's birthday party, my mother-in-law warmly welcomed my husband and daughter but gave me a fierce glare. "You're not to come in. You're not invited to the birthday party," she said coldly and then slammed the front door shut. What? Shocked by her harsh treatment, I went straight home. The next day, something terrible happened, and I started shaking. My name is Aileen, a 46-year-old office worker. I live with my high school daughter Julia and my husband Ned. Julia, who is in the wind ensemble, talks about her tough practices every day, but seeing her enjoy it makes me happy too. Unlike our fulfilled daughter, my husband always seemed bored with life. Isn't there anything fun to do? It's all so dull. Watching him sigh made me feel gloomy too. Ned, who doesn't really have any hobbies, seems to only enjoy eating his favorite foods. He particularly likes greasy food, but I, concerned about health, try not to make it at home. So, he often eats out, always complaining about being out of money. I want to go back home and eat as much fried chicken and barbecue with Mom as I want. My mother-in-law also loves greasy food, so when we visit, Ned and she indulge together. My father-in-law has passed away, and she lives alone. My sister-in-law's family lives nearby, and she occasionally checks on my mother-in-law, which is reassuring. When my sister-in-law and her husband first got married, they lived with my mother-in-law, but apparently, their relationship soured, and they moved out. She seems to want greasy food all morning, and when my sister-in-law cautioned her, she got angry. "I'm cooking it myself, let me be." Despite their concerns for her health, my mother-in-law treated them like nuisances. My sister-in-law, troubled, discussed it with Ned, who irresponsibly suggested, "Let Mom eat what she wants. But if she gets sick, you take care of her." My sister-in-law was appalled by his response. Ned, leaving all the care to her, occasionally gossips with his mother about my sister-in-law at the family home. She always tries to make Mom eat simple meals. Maybe she's doing it out of spite since she was kicked out. My mother-in-law seemed pleased to have Ned on her side. That's right. Such an unfortunate daughter to make me eat only vegetables. Feeling sorry for my sister-in-law, who was genuinely concerned about our mother-in-law's health, I interjected. "My sister-in-law isn't like that. Isn't she just concerned about your health?" My mother-in-law shouted back at me with a red face. "Don't you, a clueless daughter-in-law, interfere. You plan to feed me poor meals too." Seeing her angry, Ned also scolded me. "You only feed me simple meals too, you don't understand our feelings. Just keep quiet." Both appeared triumphant though they were clearly overweight, which worried me about their health. But money was also a concern. Living on a pension, my mother-in-law buys whatever she wants without thinking. Not just feasts but clothes too, she can't resist buying them, and when she runs out of money, she turns to my sister-in-law. She keeps buying unnecessary things, so I have to give her money. Lately, it seems she's been taking it from Ned. Aileen, you haven't heard about this from Ned, have you? I was unaware Ned had been giving money to his mother until my sister-in-law told me. He had recently started complaining about being short on money and had stopped contributing to our living expenses. Though Ned doesn't really have hobbies, I finally understood where his money was going. I was furious. I work hard, thinking about our daughter's college fund, yet Ned was giving money to his mother. If she's struggling financially, that's one thing, but there's no need to support her wasteful spending. Despite receiving help from my sister-in-law, it angered me that she was also taking money from Ned. I confronted him first. "Prices are rising, and it's tough, so please contribute to the living expenses." When I said this and asked him to share the burden, he responded seriously. "That's true. Everything is getting more expensive, and Mom might be struggling too." I hinted at not giving money to his mother, worried he'd get angry if I said it outright, but it seemed he didn't catch my drift. According to my sister-in-law, lately, my mother-in-law has been buying lots of fitness equipment, and her home is a mess. She thinks buying and used fitness equipment will make her healthy. I only give her necessary money, so probably Ned is funding it. I was dumbfounded when I heard this from my sister-in-law over the phone. Last time we visited, my mother-in-law complained about knee pain, so I casually suggested. Maybe light exercise could help. Walking might be good. I intended for her to walk outside, but instead, she bought indoor fitness equipment. She even bought fancy sportswear that she never wears. Frustrated with my husband, who wouldn't pay for our living expenses because of her wasteful spending, I asked, "Did you pay for the health equipment Mom bought?" Ned was surprised I knew about it, but suddenly got angry. "Don't complain about how I use the money I earn. Aileen works too, so it should be fine if I don't pay the living expenses." He spoke defiantly and stormed off somewhere. I wish he'd at least help with the household and childcare expenses. Hearing our conversation, my daughter said, "Dad cares about Grandma more than us." I've never expected much from him. Seeing my daughter speak coldly, I realized I couldn't rely on my husband either. She continued, "When you go off to college or start working and move out, Mom, it will just be you and Dad living together. Can you really keep living with him?" My daughter's words struck me deeply. I had never seriously considered the idea of living alone with my husband, and thinking about it now was frightening. Even now, we hardly speak, and it's my daughter who keeps me company, allowing me to live normally. I had thought it was still a long way off before my daughter would leave home, but her words suddenly made me anxious about the future. Living just with my husband, who doesn't even contribute to our expenses, would essentially mean supporting him. "You're right, Julia. I'll seriously think about our future," I responded. Julia smiled happily at this. Being pointed out by my daughter, who I still thought of as a child, was a good opportunity for me to reconsider my relationship with my husband. After a while, my husband approached me with a grin. "Mom's planning to throw a birthday party for Julia at our place soon. You'll probably hear from her later." Since we had never celebrated our daughter's birthday at my in-laws before, I was puzzled. "What? Is your mom really throwing a birthday party?" I asked my husband to confirm, thinking I had misheard, and he said it was true that his mother was preparing it for Julia. As I felt suspicious, a call from my mother-in-law came. "I suppose Ned told you, but I'm going to throw a birthday party for Julia. I'll prepare everything, so you'll pay for it, Aileen." Her words clarified why she was holding a birthday party this year. My mother-in-law, wanting money, was plotting to get it from me. Perhaps the money from Ned wasn't enough anymore, I thought in disbelief as she continued. "I want to give Julia a birthday present, so I'll need money for that too. Pass it to Ned." When she demanded $2,000, I couldn't help but ask, "Does a birthday party really cost that much?" She replied discontentedly, "A mother should pay at least this much. It includes the cost of the present, so it's actually quite cheap." I was about to say I'd handled the arrangements myself when she hung up. Hearing the amount, I doubted whether the money would really be used for my daughter. When my husband returned home, he asked me for the money. "Mom told you, right? I'm taking the money over, so prepare $2,000. When I hesitated to hand over the money, my husband started yelling. "Why won't you spend money for your own daughter's birthday? I never thought you were such a miser." Despite being upset by his words, I retorted, "Are you really throwing a birthday party for Julia? Your mom is not going to use the money for something else, is she?" My husband looked troubled for a moment but quickly replied, "No way that would happen. Trust me." Despite his assurance, I reluctantly agreed to give him the money. When I told Julia about the birthday party, she clearly looked displeased. "We have to go all the way to Grandma's for my birthday party? I don't want to go." I explained that her grandmother was preparing presents, trying to persuade her to go to the in-laws. If Julia decided not to go, I knew my mother-in-law and husband wouldn't return the money. Since I had already paid, I hoped we could at least enjoy the birthday party. Julia's birthday fell on a holiday, so the three of us, my husband, Julia, and I, decided to go to my in-laws. Upon arrival, my mother-in-law joyfully welcomed my husband and Julia. "Welcome. You must be tired. Come in." As my husband and Julia entered, and I followed, my mother-in-law's face suddenly turned stern. "You're not to come in. You're not invited to the birthday party," she said coldly and then slammed the front door shut. "What?" Shocked, all I could muster was confusion. Inside, my husband spitefully said, "You just need to cover the costs. You can walk home." Realizing they had planned this from the start just to get money from me, I regretted my naivete. My daughter seemed upset that I wasn't allowed in, but my husband and mother-in-law were persuading her. I knew my mother-in-law disliked me because I often disagreed with her about food, but I hadn't expected such malice. Perhaps my husband, tired of my complaints about the living expenses, conspired with my mother-in-law to exclude me. I had been suspicious when my mother-in-law mentioned the birthday party, thinking it was just about the money, but perhaps troubling me was also her goal. I was worried about Julia, but she was in high school, and I believed my husband and mother-in-law would take care of her, so I quickly returned home by taxi. My sister-in-law's house was close, and I thought Julia could turn to her if needed. Back home, I seriously contemplated divorcing my husband and how I might live from now on. Since we were renting, moving to a new place with Julia seemed like a good idea. Living without having to care for my husband seemed easier, as he still wasn't contributing to the expenses. Frustrated, I returned home, but thinking about leaving my husband calmed me. I was worried about my daughter left at my in-laws, but I managed to fall asleep alone peacefully. However, early the next morning, my smartphone rang abruptly, waking me up. It was my sister-in-law. "Aileen, it's terrible. There's been a fire at Mom's house." Shaken by her words, I exclaimed, "Is Julia okay?" She was supposed to be staying over. While trembling, I heard my daughter's voice on the other end of the phone. "Mom, I'm safe. I was staying at Aunt's house." Relieved but weakened by the news, I learned from my sister-in-law that Julia was all right and immediately headed to my mother-in-law's house. According to my sister-in-law, my husband and mother-in-law had escaped, but I needed to pick up Julia and learn more about the situation. Arriving at the burnt-down building, I was relieved they were safe. "Mom, you didn't need to rush." Standing dazed in front of the ruins, Julia approached me. "Are you hurt, Julia? I'm glad you're safe." Seeing my daughter smile, I felt a surge of relief and nearly cried. My sister-in-law also rushed over. "Sorry for the trouble. Mom and Ned were having a party and fell asleep without turning off the portable stove." My sister-in-law and I shared the same look of disbelief. My daughter had been forced to cook by my husband and mother-in-law and had escaped to my sister-in-law's house midway through, which thankfully meant she wasn't present at the fire. At my own birthday party, they made me cook and bring food. There were no presents, it was just a party for Dad and Grandma. My daughter explained with a sigh, making me feel even more disdain for their actions. Although the in-laws' house had burned down, it was a relief that no one was injured. When my husband and mother-in-law appeared, tired and covered in soot after being checked at the hospital, my husband said to me, "Aileen, did you come to pick us up? I just want to go home and rest." To which I replied, "So it wasn't Julia's birthday party after all, just a party for you and your mother. What do you mean by taking money from me for that?" My mother-in-law responded instead of my embarrassed husband, "Don't act so high and mighty just because you gave some money. It's your fault the house burned down." Not understanding how it could possibly be my fault, I glared at her as my sister-in-law told my mother-in-law, "I'm done taking care of Mom. I heard from Julia that you tricked Aileen out of her money to fund your party." My mother-in-law, unfazed by the accusation, blandly retorted, "If Aileen hadn't given us the money, we wouldn't have had the party, and there wouldn't have been a fire. It's all Aileen's fault, so you should divorce Kenji right away." I was furious but contained it and responded calmly, "Understood. I will divorce Kenji, and we won't have to see each other again." Taken aback by my declaration, my husband panicked. "Why do Aileen and I have to divorce? I can't live without her." I cruelly responded, "You can't even pay the living expenses, it seems you can't live without me. But since your mother insists we divorce, I guess it can't be helped." Following my lead, Julia also stated, "Of course, I'll go with Mom. I've always disliked Dad since he never paid any attention to me." Hearing his daughter plainly say she disliked him, my husband was stunned into silence. In his place, my mother-in-law shouted, "The cheeky granddaughter and troublesome daughter-in-law can get out." I'll get the fire insurance money and build a new house. Hearing this, my sister-in-law and I, along with my daughter, left the house, dumbfounded by their audacity. My husband, who had pleaded not to divorce, quietly watched us leave after hearing his mother mention fire insurance. It was an anticlimactic farewell. We temporarily moved to my parents' home, started looking for a new place to live, and proceeded with the divorce. My husband quickly agreed to the divorce and signed the papers easily but hesitated to pay child support. Why should I pay child support for a daughter who hates me? He argued, but after consulting a lawyer I had hired, he reluctantly paid in full. Surprisingly, he borrowed money to make the payment, expecting to cover it with fire insurance money. Even after our divorce, the fact that he was still Julia's father meant he had responsibilities, regardless of our personal feelings. Living comfortably without my ex-husband, who had lied and manipulated money from me, was refreshing. However, he soon called, asking, "Where are you and Julia living now? Can I live with you too?" Despite feeling refreshed after our divorce, when my ex-husband suggested we live together again, I said this to him. "What are you talking about? We're divorced, don't call me anymore." He started to explain, almost in tears. The truth is, the fire insurance had expired, and I didn't get any money at all. It turned out he was desperate. The burned-down house was in my mother-in-law's name, but the land was leased, and the landlord had demanded it back unless a new house was built. With no insurance money to clear the debris, they were stuck. My ex-husband and mother-in-law were now burdened with the rent and living expenses of the house where we used to live. He begged, "I can't even pay back the loan I took out for child support. Please, let's live together again." I was shocked by his audacious request, which was quickly followed by my mother-in-law's plea. "It's ridiculous to divorce over just $2,000. We're in much bigger trouble now, so you should help us." I realized my mistake in feeling momentarily sorry for them. It's not about the amount. It's the deceit that's the problem. I said that and hung up the phone, never answering calls from my ex-husband again. Later, my sister-in-law told me that he had borrowed more money to clear the debris from the burnt-down in-laws' house. My mother-in-law had sought help from my sister-in-law too, but she outright refused because she didn't like her arrogant attitude. The mother-in-law, who still lives with my ex-husband, continues to buy whatever she wants behind his back, and their debt is apparently increasing. My ex-husband must have finally realized how hard it is to live on just his salary. However, unless he stops my mother-in-law's wasteful spending, they will likely go bankrupt eventually. Meanwhile, my daughter and I are doing well. She goes to high school every day with enthusiasm. She is doing well in her studies as well as her extracurricular activities, and her teachers have reassured me that she will likely get into her university of choice. Without my ex-husband, who never paid the living expenses and ignored my health concerns, I can now focus more on my work. I need to work hard for my daughter's education, but I do not feel it is a burden. Moving forward, I want to continue living healthily and happily with my daughter.